In this video, I'm going to be covering an intro level overview on fasting and how it's been practiced in Orthodox Christianity since the time of Christ for millenniums now. And it's also practiced in a way in many other Christian denominations. People will give up a type of food that they really enjoy or something of this world that they really enjoy. They will fast from it, and that will be their fasting. But I'm going to talk about how it's done in Orthodoxy. There's 3 things that Christ tells us that we must do in order to be good Christians. We must give, we must pray, and we must fast. In Matthew, we read that when Jesus was explaining to them how to perform exorcisms and the apostles were not being successful, he tells them, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. In some Bibles, this verse does not exist. Isaac the Syrian, one of the early fathers of Orthodox Christianity, says that fasting is a weapon of spiritual warfare. And it's mentioned throughout all different types of Christian texts, so we'll be diving more into that. But in Orthodoxy, approximately 180 days to around 200 days out of the year, Orthodox Christians will fast. 48 days before Easter, 15 days before the feast day of the Virgin Mary, 40 days before Christmas, essentially every Sunday right before church, every Wednesday, every Friday, and many other days throughout the year, Orthodox Christians are fasting. Now, Orthodoxy provides guidelines. It doesn't say that those who do not fast are sinning. Likewise, it also provides what is called economia. This economia allows pregnant women, people who may be sick or are unable to fast, to be exempted from these recommendations. So what is fasting? Is fasting not eating? What does that mean? Fasting is the restriction of meat, fish, dairy, and eggs, as well as olive oil and wine. The fasting diet consists of basically fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, non-fish sea animals, and snails. Ugh. I remember watching my Greek grandmother eat snails, and I had absolutely no idea how she could go through with that. Unreal. I'm sorry, folks. I don't want to sound judgmental, but I just can't. I can't get over the thought of snails. But I have heard with things like shrimp, calamari, all of these non-fish sea animals, that when oil is recommended to be restricted, that those are also restricted as well, because typically the two are cooked together. So I've heard that is the reason why you abstain from those sea animals when you're also restricting your olive oil intake. So essentially it is a plant-based diet, especially during the big fasting times out of the year that we talked about, such as Great Lent, which we're in right now. So I've heard many reasons as to why olive oil and wine are restricted, even though they are plant-based foods. One of the reasons I've heard is that olive oil and wine, back in the day, they used to be stored in animal skins. And because of that, with the cross-contamination and also the recommendations to limit the flesh, those were abstained from the diet during fasting times. But I would also assume that olive oil and wine are very pleasurable, and that may be another reason why it is restricted. Some choose to consume different types of oils or vegan butter alternatives or different types of alcohol during this time because it explicitly states that it's olive oil and wine. But I would also argue that olive oil and wine are very pleasurable and on the higher side in terms of calories. So as a dietitian, I make that connection. And while people choose to consume other types of oils and other types of alcohol during the fasting season, because the recommendations are to avoid olive oil and wine, in my opinion, as well as many other people tend to agree with this opinion, is that we should be fasting from all oil and all alcohol during these times. And the reason most likely they restricted olive oil and wine back in the day, because if you think about it, all this came out of the Mediterranean region. What did people eat back then? Olive oil in terms of oils and wine in terms of alcohol. Plus, what good does it if you are abstaining from olive oil but using soybean oil or all different types of vegetable oils or even those vegan butters as an alternative and saying to yourself you're doing good, but then you're also eating all those different types of fats in your diet. So you got to ask the question, what good is it doing to you? So that's why I personally think that during fasting seasons, we should abstain from those different types of oils and those different types of alcohols. So by eating a whole food plant-based diet, not only are we recreating the very early diet that was eaten during creation, but we are also reaping many health benefits at the same time. A whole food plant-based diet has been correlated to lower risks of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, certain forms of cancers. It just does the body good. In Greek, when we are full after a meal, we typically say chortasa. In Greek, the word chorta means a type of wild green that we will boil and we'll eat with typically lemon and olive oil. It's so interesting that we use this word chorta inside the word for feeling full and satisfied, chortasa. Isn't that interesting that we're using a type of plant to indicate that we're full? And most likely this happens because of the fiber that is in plants and the fiber that is absent in animal products. Fiber fills the stomach up and allows us to feel that fullness and that satisfaction. And you typically get that feeling of fullness much faster when you are eating a whole food plant-based diet rich in fiber, and ultimately you are eating less calories because of that. Fasting is how I actually got started in this journey. I fasted for the first time for the full 48 days during Easter of 2012. And it inspired me to become a dietitian and to also start this YouTube channel. But the health benefits of fasting is not why the church recommends it. From the first century, we look at the Dietitian, which translates to teaching, and it is the teaching of the 12 apostles. And in there, we learn that we must fast on Wednesdays because of the betrayal of Christ, and Friday because of the crucifixion of Christ. So right there, every single week, Wednesdays and Fridays, we are fasting because of what happened to Christ. In the Old Testament, when Daniel was a captive of the king of Babylon, he stated that he did not want to defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank, and he ate only vegetables and water, a similar practice which can be seen in Orthodoxy today. Likewise, the reason why we fast for 40 days before Holy Week, as well as 40 days before Christmas, is because Jesus fasted for 40 days while he was in the desert after being baptized, while he was also being tempted by the devil. We can see other examples in the Old Testament, like when Moses fasted for 40 days on Mount Sinai. Many Greek Orthodox monks, such as those living on Mount Athos, follow a strict pescatarian or plant-based diet, such as the venerable Saint Paisios back there. You can see his icon, and he is my hero. I'm just going to say that he is my hero. I have studied his work and I continue to study it. Besides a very few occasions where he might have been sick or he might have not been feeling well, he essentially ate a 100% plant-based diet. He's also mentioned in some of his writings that certain animal products inflame one's carnality. St. Paisios was a great faster, and I really admire his discipline, although it's not something that I would recommend that you all follow the way he did it. Yes, he was able to progress very spiritually, and I highly recommend that you all study his life. However, during fasting seasons, he would only eat one boiled dish a day, with no olive oil even. Sometimes he would eat dry food as well, only dry food. Definitely not a healthy diet by any means, but if you study his life, you cannot deny the holiness of this man and how fasting helped him. There are reasons why monks like St. Paisios would have fasted like he fasted. These monks are literally keeping the world together. They use fasting because it helps them with their prayers. Us ordinary people, we can take lessons from them, but it should not be done dangerously. And if you have a history of anorexia or other types of health problems that don't allow you to do a strict fast, I do not recommend that you follow the fasts of St. Paisios. But it's certainly doable. Again, it's not supposed to be dangerous, but it's supposed to be an opportunity to allow you to be mindful of how much you're eating, what you're eating. Are you eating something because of pleasure versus it aligning with the fasting recommendations. It lets you be mindful of these things. We need to understand how powerful and how addicting food can be. Most of us do not fast from our regular diet. We do not know what it's like to fast from the foods that we are so privileged of eating every single day. But most people, unfortunately, don't even fast from meat. Or they might fast from meat, or they might only fast during Holy Week or whatever variation of fasting it may be. But I guarantee you that you can fast for 40 days on a whole food plant-based diet. Trust me, I've been doing it for 13 years now, and I'm still alive, I'm still doing well. I've not had a protein deficiency yet, so I promise you'll be fine. Now, here's an important thing to keep in mind when you are fasting. In Matthew, we learn that when you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. So by fasting in secret, unlike this sinner that you see in front of you right now, it shows humility. You're not showing off to the world that you're accomplishing your fasting goals, nor does it show that you are going through suffering and people will feel bad for you. None of that. You can simply hide that from the rest of the world, and only one will see it, and that is God. He sees everything, and he feels everything that you are going through. Everything that you are thinking during your fast. He knows, he hears you. Fasting also goes beyond diet as well. It's not just fasting from food, but it's fasting from the pleasures of this world. It's fasting from the passions such as pride, lust, gluttony, greed, anger, depression, slothfulness. It's about focusing more on the virtues such as self-discipline, practicing celibacy, love, generosity, happiness, diligency, and humility. You do this by praying more, by giving more, and by fasting more. It is so easy in getting comfortable in our own lives and trying to fulfill our own needs and desires and simply shutting everything off, not caring about other people's needs, only caring about ourselves. It does the spirit so much good to experience this type of challenge, the challenges that we face from fasting and what it brings to our lives. With fasting, we are not trying to deny ourselves of pleasure just because of so. We are not doing this because we're just trying to suffer with no reason behind it. The reason why we fast is because we are telling ourselves that we have the ability to abstain from the things of this world because we do not love them. If we love the things of this world, then we will worship the things of this world. And if we worship the things of this world, we remain here with these things of this world. What you also don't want to do when you are fasting is you don't want to eat just a whole food plant-based diet, feel really good about it, and also hurt your neighbor with your words and your actions. That is not showing humility. That is not the purpose of fasting. You don't want to be religious. What is a religious person? A religious person is someone who is very knowledgeable, follows all of the rules, but is not a Christian. You need to be a Christian. You need to have humility for your neighbors. Your actions must be just. Do not judge others, especially during times of fasting. And as Christians, our purpose is to help out our neighbors. It's to help lift up our brothers and sisters, not hurt them. In Romans, we read that the one who eats everything must not treat with contempt the one who does not. And the one who does not eat everything must not judge the one who does, for God has accepted them. Like I said, we must not judge anyone. We must see them as saints, not sinners. This is the time to distance ourselves from the worldly pleasures, focus as much as we can on our faith, and try to follow in the footsteps of Christ himself. We will most likely fall short. The one you're seeing in front of you falls short every single day, but we still must strive for what we believe in, for what is best and what is meant for us. We must not stop going towards that direction. We cannot simply live on bread alone, as we are told. We must live on the Word of God. We must learn to endure. We must learn to practice repentance, humility, grace, and focus on faith, especially during times of fasting. Do this, and you will be very successful during your fasts. So if you want to learn more about the subject of fasting, I highly recommend that on a Sunday, you visit a Greek Orthodox church or any Orthodox church, and you simply walk in and you just observe. You take everything in, be silent, look at people, look at what they're doing, and if you're feeling up for it, ask if you could speak with a spiritual father who can help guide you in fasting and help teach you about orthodoxy. And I really hope that you end up giving it a shot, whether you are an Orthodox, whether you are Christian, or a person of a different belief. I highly recommend that you end up trying it, because you will probably learn a lot about yourself. And just a little last bit of advice for you guys. Pray. Pray for forgiveness. Pray that God forgives all of us, every single one of us, alive and the ones that have passed away. Pray that he gives us more faith each and every single day. Pray for the one that you're seeing in front of your screen right now. Just pray as much as you can. Love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.